Okay, not everyone is awful. I love Transformers, but a lot of the movies aren't that great, to be honest. Granted, it has been a while since I watched some of these movies. So in this video, we're gonna discover if I'm still a Transformers fan, even after sitting through Sam Witwicky's ever-decaying sanity. By the way, I won't be watching the first animated movie because that ties into a show and I won't get the full experience.
Bumblebee, stop lubricating the man.
The first Transformers movie is a promising start to the franchise. We follow the Autobots as they try and capture the Allspark before the Decepticons do, because that would be bad. You'd think that the movie would want to heavily focus on the Autobot characters, because that's what everyone was going into this movie expecting. Nah, let's follow this human boy named Sam as he tries to get laid. Seriously, we are stuck with Sam until an hour in when the Autobots arrive. Sam isn't the greatest character because he's kind of weird. Since he's only a mere human, there's nothing for him to really do among these big robots. I could care less about him, or really any of the human characters, because they are all mostly sarcastic losers. Except Simmons. He can stay.
14 rats. Bingo! Tag him and bang him!
He's somehow just as unhinged as the rest of the people here, but also the most sane. Also, why is everyone so sweaty? I'm going blind from staring at their glistening foreheads. The movie splits its plot into 3 subplots, with Sam dealing with the Autobots, the army fighting a robot scorpion, and the government trying to figure out what the hell is going on. You can probably guess what plot's more interesting. Yeah, everything that wasn't about the big robots was so boring to me, and I got sick of seeing military shots, and I know there's way more to come. Everything comes together in the end, which is kind of neat to see, but I don't know if it's because we got a massive robot battle afterwards. Speaking of the robot fights, what the hell am I looking at? The action is pretty hard to follow at times because the design of the robots are way too over-designed, I think. It makes it way harder to understand what's happening in a fight. And it doesn't help that every Decepticon looks the same. They are hardly in the movie until the final fight, so I don't even know anything about them. On the other hand, we get to see a good amount of the Autobots, and I'm glad there were only 5. I know all of their names, and they each have their own personality. Like Ironhide likes guns, and Jazz might be racist.
What's cracking, little bitches? This looks like a cool place to kick it.
Later movies have way too many Autobots, but I'll talk about that more later. The actual CGI on all the characters is surprisingly really great. For 2007, this shit holds up supremely. I really liked the opening scene as it showed off what these robots are all about. Disguising themselves, transforming, and fucking shit up. The movie was a little too long for my liking, but it kept its pace up well enough where I didn't notice. It's actually kind of sad how well done this first movie was, because it's all downhill from here. Transformers 2 is somehow better and worse than the first one. The plot revolves around a new villain who wants to destroy Earth's sun. Wow. The Fallen, who is the villain, needs Sam, who has a map implanted in his head by a piece of the Allspark, to get to a new MacGuffin called the Matrix of Leadership, so he can activate the sun-killing machine. That is unironically the whole plot, and it really isn't that interesting. But on the flip side, Sam's journey to find the Matrix actually had me really invested. He wants it to revive Optimus after he dies. Sam is a lot more enjoyable to watch, as he actually gets something to do, and feels more like a main character. But this journey also leaves the Autobots feeling sidelined. There's still a good amount of action scenes, but if you aren't Optimus Prime, you don't get a lot of screen time. And when Optimus dies, there's barely any robots! Remember the point I made that the first movie had a good group of Autobots? Well, we've already seen the drop off here, because there's a lot of new characters who get even less screen time. For some reason, they gave a good amount of time to Skids and Mudflap, who are controversial stereotypes.
That hurt, man. It's supposed to hurt, it's an ass kicking.
There were these motorcycle bots, who I completely forgot about, and who the hell is this blue guy? How can I care for these characters when they don't tell us their names? A new character I actually did like was Sideswipe. Bro has so much aura in the opening scene, and then is never used again. He destroys a Decepticon with style, then poses on him. Can I mention as well, Optimus Prime is an absolute psycho in this film. The way he kills these Decepticons is so brutal, and he keeps this up for a while. The action with all these robots is a little easier to follow, I found, but still just a bunch of shapes slamming into each other. The movie is still way too long, and why does that robot have nuts?
Enemy scrotum.
Huh. This is the best movie so far. I was kind of shocked by this revelation because I always thought the original topped this. Dark of the Moon's plot is the most interesting out of what we've gotten so far, and that's thanks to the main villain, Sentinel Prime. He wants to bring Cybertron back to its former glory by teaming up with the Decepticons, and literally bringing Cybertron to Earth. But before this actually happens, the movie focuses on this big conspiracy involving the moon landing, and it was all actually entertaining to watch. Sentinel was actually an Autobot during the war, but betrayed his comrades, which was a neat twist. You definitely wouldn't really see this coming on your first viewing. Sentinel has good motivation, a past with Optimus, and a cool reveal, so he's awesome. Oh, and this old fuck kills Ironhide, which was actually sad. He was one of the OG Autobots, and this is the only time an Autobot's death was actually sad to me. Megatron is benched here, and the main thing he does in this movie is die. Once again, there are a lot of new Autobots, with only Sideswipe returning from the last movie. He was the coolest one there, and Skids and Mudflap were...
I'm alright.
This is combat, man.
Oh, brain freeze, man.
What's wrong with you?
There isn't a lot to these guys, as you'd expect. Sam is once again pointless in the story, but he does manage to figure out the conspiracy, thanks to Simmons' help.
Tell Megatron, let's tango.
And Michaela is nowhere to be seen here. Instead, she's replaced by another hot woman, but she serves the exact same role. By the way, say goodbye to Sam Witwicky, because this is the last movie he's in. The scale of the final act was massive, with a whole city being taken over by the Decepticons, and Cybertron coming in hot. A lot of cool action moments with the Autobots and humans, and Optimus Prime isn't dead in this one. Hooray! I don't have much else to say, except this movie's so long! Everything was a lot more solid than Revenge of the Fallen, so I'm excited to see where it goes from here. Transformers Age of Extinction could have been the best movie so far, but it drops the ball so hard that it's the worst one by far. We are introduced to a new protagonist, Cade Yeager, as he and his daughter are thrusted in the middle of the beef between the Autobots and government. They are all being hunted after the events of the last movie, which shows how much the world has changed since then. Before, the government chose to work with the Autobots, but now there's been too many disasters, so they must go. This is the most interesting element of the film, but the Autobots need other robots to fight. That's where Joshua comes in, with his man-made Transformers. He wants this seed to make more Transformium to make these robots. But when Megatron corrupts his Galvatron, he wants the seed too, so he can destroy a city. Does this sound confusing? It's meant to be, because that's what the movie is like. The plot could have been about the Autobots fighting these custom bots, as the government tries to capture them. But they make it too complicated with Megatron actually being Galvatron. But wait, there's still some more shit crammed in here. There's a bounty hunter named Lockdown here to help kill the remaining bots on Earth, and he is the one to give Joshua the seed. Lockdown is another one of my favorite characters in this saga, because he has a fucking face gun, and can turn into a Lamborghini? His inclusion does make sense for the events of the movie. He's kind of the final boss, but that leaves Galvatron and the other new Decepticons feeling sidelined. Oh, and also there's a heavy focus on Dinobots, which feels the most out of place. I have no clue how they thought these guys would work here. Anyway, back to the things I liked. Cade works way better as a main human character than Sam ever did. Sam rarely had things to do that impacted the plot, but here, Cade gets up in the action with his alien gun. He was kind of rocking Lockdown shit here. Cade's also an inventor, so he's pretty tech savvy. He's just a lot more enjoyable to watch, and isn't a freak like the last one. The cast of the Autobots has dropped back down to 5 central characters, which is so nice. Now I'm not suffocated with 10 million new Autobots. I think I prefer this group of 5 compared to the first movie's cast, because they all get more lines, which is nice. I really like the look of Bumblebee in his muscle car form, but then he goes back to the Camaro look and it just ruins it. But small things like this can't save the movie that goes for nearly 3 hours. Are you serious? This is just unnecessary. The movie ends with its usual Optimus speech, but then I realized that we didn't even get a final showdown with Galvatron. What was the point of having all this attention on Megatron being resurrected, then make him do nothing? I need the next movie to be good. The Last Knight is without a doubt the worst Transformers movie. But before I get into why this is so shit, let me tell you the stuff I didn't mind. For starters, the whole idea of exploring the history of Transformers on Earth is pretty interesting. Like, knowing that Bumblebee helped fight against Hitler is awesome, and something you'd probably never think about. I don't think anyone questioned how long Bumblebee could have been on Earth before the first movie. Everything about the Knights was kind of cool, and the way they linked this movie's plot to the Wickwickens was neat, and lets us remember Sam was a thing. They hit us with the fact that Sam is most likely dead, since Vivian is the last Wiccan, which is kind of an unfortunate way to find out the main character of 3 movies is gone. Vivian is thankfully given a big role in the story, instead of just being another useless sexy lady. Okay, they still play this angle a little bit. Anthony Hopkins is also here, and he's having a great time playing this character. I love how crazy this guy is. And why does he keep yelling at people?
All you boys and girls, off the sub now! Off the sub now!
Alright, time to bitch. Fuck me, this movie is messy, and just downright horrible. The plot revolves around the characters fighting over a staff that has tremendous power. But this is literally the 4th movie so far to have a MacGuffin that everyone wants. The only movie that didn't have a plot like this was Dark of the Moon, which is probably why that movie is the best one so far. It's so repetitive now, and you know what else is repetitive? Megatron is still here, and still isn't the main villain. Every movie after the first one has had Megatron sit on the sideline or serve some other master when he really doesn't need to be in the story. But because they need to sell toys, boom, he's back. He isn't even Galvatron anymore, which would have been better, in my opinion. He transforms normally again, instead of the cool Transformium way, like in the last movie. And if you think Megatron is unimportant, then you haven't even seen the other Decepticons. They do this Suicide Squad introduction with them, making you think you'll be spending a lot of time with them. None of them matter, and I think they should have been removed entirely. They had another better antagonist right there with Nemesis Prime. So the actual main villain of the movie and the creator of the Transformers is Quintessa, who wants that staff to remake Cybertron and destroy the Earth. She turns Optimus evil near the start of the movie, but then Bro's hardly in it. He's benched again until the final act, where he is very menacing, I'll give him that. I think he should have showed up throughout the movie, hunting for the staff himself, and the Autobots would have to try and stop him. That would have been sick. But no, give him a 5-second fight with Bumblebee. By the way, Bumblebee's voice returns, or is fixed, which is weird considering he talked in the first movie.
I would lay down my life for you.
Bumblebee, your voice. I have not heard it since Cybertron fell.
I wish to stay with the boy.
Honestly, Optimus doesn't act any differently under Quintessa's influence. He's always been very brutal and threatening. The film also suffers with how it's structured. The first half reintroduces us to the characters from the last movie, while also introducing some new ones, like Izzy here. She gets a fair amount of screen time, but doesn't contribute anything. So much to the point that they shaft her in the second half. This second half has Cade and Vivian going around looking for the stick, and this feels like a whole new movie. Speaking of shafting, literally every robot is sidelined for the staff hunt. No one is important or prominent in this film until the final climax. It's so funny how the Transformers movie barely has any important Transformers in it. Oh, and while all this is going down, Earth is apparently a being called Unicron, who, from my understanding, is the big bad of the Transformers franchise. But even this guy doesn't get enough focus. Awful movie, just awful to watch. Bumblebee marks a turning point for this franchise, as it reevaluates the Michael Bay movies and literally improves everything. For example, this movie is actually good. It's almost kind of jarring to have such a superb film right after the series at its lowest. Bumblebee is obviously about Bumblebee when he first arrives on Earth. Now, if you remember a point I made in the last movie review, Bumblebee was said to be on Earth as early as World War II, as he helped fight Hitler. Well, not anymore, because it's the 80s now, bitch. This movie can be seen as two things: a prequel set before the first movie, or a reboot of the whole saga. Both sides have arguments, but that causes some stuff from other movies to be retconned. I personally would think this as a prequel because I don't want to remember the last night. So Bumblebee is sent to Earth during the War of Cybertron, and he loses his memories and voice fighting a Decepticon. From here on, the movie becomes a slice of life with Bumblebee bonding with a new protagonist, Charlie. And then he has to fight two more Decepticons. This new style of film is so damn refreshing for the franchise, and is done really well. The smaller scope of the plot could deter fans, but it's so nice to have some space to breathe. The only Transformers we get in the main story are Bumblebee, Shatter, and Dropkick, which leaves so much screen time to get to know the characters. There are cameos from other characters in the opening scene, which is really badass by the way. And Optimus Prime is of course here, and gets to say his famous catchphrase.
Cause I'm coming. I've come. I am coming.
All the robots have way cleaner designs, which was a big problem for the older movies. But most importantly, you can actually follow the fight scenes. Yes! Big props to the movie for this. The fights themselves have been cranked up in quality.
You think these little chains can hold?
Now the robots are done well, but we know these movies have a human issue. Never mind, all my complaints have been voided, because John Cena is here.
That one was on me. That's a malfunctioning trigger. This weapon is just faulty. Someone is gonna get a talking to.
Nah, seriously, all the human characters are really likable, but especially Charlie. I think in terms of depth, she is the best protagonist. As we see, she has really relatable problems, which helps us like her more. We weren't really able to connect with Cade and Sam, because how are we meant to relate to Inventor Knight and a lunatic? Charlie is able to have something to do in the climax, stopping the Decepticons from calling their comrades, while B literally tears the bad guys apart. While the movie is getting so much right, I do have a complaint. Since we spend so much time watching Bumblebee dick around with Charlie, I can't help but feel like all the stuff is overstaying its welcome. It did serve to grow Charlie and B's relationship. The whole idea of the franchise is robots fighting each other, so I did wish we could skip a little bit of this and get to some action. It's not a big deal, but it's something I couldn't help but notice. Now that Bumblebee has gotten so much character development and spotlight, I wonder what they're gonna do with him in the next movie. They kill him off. Rise of the Beast continues the prequel reboot saga, but dang it, it's just not as good as Bumblebee. Don't get me wrong, it's still a pretty good movie, and is way better than all the Michael Bay movies. But it sadly relapses into old habits from those past entries. The plot is, once again, centered around a piece of alien crap. Oh my god, I'm so sick of this! I don't write movies, but surely there could be something else you could do here. It's the default stories for these movies, and they all go the same way. Both groups looking for it. It falls into the hands of the bad guys. Then the Autobots stop whatever they want to use it for, in the nick of time. I'm not angry, I'm just disappointed. The plot as a whole is very basic, which again is disappointing because I thought these newer movies would try something different. Continuing the trend Bumblebee started, there are some things that have been retconned. Now Unicron is not the Earth, but wants to eat it instead. Optimus has been stuck on Earth for 7 years instead of arriving for the first time in the first movie. He's actually pissed about this fact, since he left Cybertron and his comrades to die. This leads to Optimus being really shitty, which is a new side of the character that hasn't really been explored. He's still that psychopath we know him as, but it makes more sense in this movie, and is also fueled by the fact that Bumblebee is dead. Yeah, I don't know why you'd want to kill off a character that is loved by so many. And it doesn't even lead to anything, since he gets revived for the final battle. Instead, Mirage is our new main Autobot character. And yeah, he's very likable, with some of the best lines in the movie.
Work friends? You've been inside me. Scared? Please, I'm not scared. That's just engine oil.
Other great characters include Optimus Primal, Air Razor, and... who are you? There are too many characters. There are 5 Autobots, 4 Maximals, 3 Terracons, and 2 humans. I complained about this in Revenge of the Fallen, but in that movie, those other Autobots served more as background characters. Where here, they try to squeeze each character into the plot, and it doesn't work. I would have ditched Rhinox, Cheetor, and Wheeljack, because those 3 literally do nothing, and have like 2 lines between them all. Now for the human characters. I really like Noah, as he also got a great character arc, very similar to Optimus's. But Elena is whatever. She's only there to give us nuggets of history. Back to Noah, he's pretty compelling as a main character. He feels like he has to protect his family, and wants to destroy the MacGuffin so the Earth is saved, but will strand the Autobots on Earth. He decides to put this kind of selfish but reasonable thought behind him, to stand with the Autobots in the fight. He's also in the action too, wearing Mirage's dead body. I think everything works well with Noah, except I wish him and Mirage had more scenes together. They try to craft this friendship between the two, which works okay, but I just think there should be more. I think the villains are really cool. I'm so glad they decided not to include any Decepticons, because the Terracons are awesome. They serve Unicron, and are shown to be way more powerful than our heroes. This is the case until the final fight, where they get folded like cardboard. Their goals are a little basic, tasked with getting the transwarp key so Unicron can come and have lunch, but these movies have never had the deepest villains. Even though the movie does regress a bit into the Michael Bay movies, I do think it works way better than them. I hope we get to see Mirage and Noah again to flesh out their bond more. But for now, this is the last live action movie. The series had so many ups and downs, but there was one thing that stayed consistent throughout all of them. The CGI looked fantastic in all of them. The last movie in this video is ironically called Transformers 1. Not to be confused with the first Transformers movie. It's an origin story for Optimus Prime, Megatron, and a lot of the other characters. It's something we've never seen before, and is obviously all fully animated. This is the best movie, hands down. The story of these two friends growing apart and becoming enemies is so good. And there's finally no humans, hooray! I love that the story is completely set on Cybertron, giving a glimpse into what the planet was like before the whole war thing started. You see a lot of familiar faces, and what their lives were like before they were dragged into the conflict. Like Sentinel Prime, he's the villain once again, and I love that this aspect of the character continues from the live action movie. This movie isn't canon with the other ones that came beforehand, and that's obvious when Sentinel gets ripped in half. I think he works better as the villain in this movie, as his whole false leader character is a neat twist. What's funny is that at the start of the movie, the main goal of the main characters was to find the Matrix of Leadership, which is yet another fetch quest. But they kind of dropped that after Sentinel is revealed to be a piece of shit. I was really worried for a second there. The best part of the movie is the building tension between D16 and Orion Pax. They establish that the two are pretty close, then as their adventure continues, D16's hatred for Sentinel really divides the two. I think it's handled perfectly, and it all wraps up in a very satisfying way. B-127 is also here, and his defining character trait is not shutting up, which is obviously meant to be juxtaposing him not being able to talk later on. And Leader 1 is just there. Can I just say that I really like Chris Hemsworth's performance as Orion Pax / Optimus Prime. Peter Cullen's voice is so iconic as the character, but Chris does really well too. I don't know if it was intentional, but as the movie goes on, Chris's performance slowly shifts into sounding more like Peter Cullen.
But listen, if you did beat me, I couldn't give you this awesome Megatronus Prime thing I have here.
We were given the power to change our world, and you chose to destroy it.
Props to the other cast members who also perform very well. Brian Tree Henry is a standout as Megatron, and I prefer his voice to whoever does it in the other movies.
No more false prophets! Follow me, and you will never again be deceived!
Since the movie is animated, it allows for a lot of cool scenery, epic fight scenes, and stunning visuals, all of which we get. Like seriously, this animation is so great, and the fight scenes go super hard. There isn't too many fight scenes, but the ones we get are fast-paced and very gripping. The final confrontation with Megatron and Optimus has them both using their transformations to the fullest by using them in combat, and it's so sick. This movie would be perfect if it weren't for some weird lines and moments that felt catered more for kids. I'm aware that kids are probably the main demographic, but a lot of Transformers fans are mostly adults, so this can feel a little alienating. There are still a lot of jokes and moments I found pretty funny, and then there are some that get me a little shameful. For shits and gigs, let's rank all the movies from worst to best. Transformers The Last Knight, Transformers Age of Extinction, Transformers Revenge of the Fallen, Transformers Dark of the Moon, Transformers Rise of the Beasts, Bumblebee, and number 1, Transformers 1. How ironic. I will say, watching all these movies was kind of exhausting. I really felt it after the last 2 Bay films, but Bumblebee really brought it back for me. A lot of the movies can blend together in terms of character designs and plot, but man, I can't help but really like this franchise, so they get a pass. I'm so happy that Transformers 1 was actually good, but I'm not too sure where the franchise will go from here. I don't think the last 2 movies made that much money, so who knows. I hope you don't hate my opinions on these movies, and I'll be back in the next video to ruin some more movies for you.